Hey folks, this is Kelani. World of Warcraft was in a bit of a bad spot before this latest patch came out. Battle for Azeroth wasn't doing all that well, and it seemed like no one really enjoyed playing their class. Island expeditions and warfronts, two of the huge new features and systems for this expansion, fell completely flat on their face, and the Azerite armor was a hollow shell of what the Legion artifacts had on offer. So this patch was incredibly important for the future of WoW, both for the BfA expansion but also just for the game in general. If things continued to nosedive, the next expansion could suffer quite badly, even if it was the best thing since Classic. Patch 8.2 had a lot of work to do if it was going to save this expansion, and now that we've spent a few weeks playing it and sampling everything on offer, I reckon it's time to have a bit of a chat about how things are going. Is patch 8.2 all that it was promised to be? Is the game significantly more enjoyable after this latest patch, and perhaps most importantly, has patch 8.2 saved the Battle for Azeroth? There is a whole bunch of stuff to unpack at this point. Patch 8.2 brought two new zones which differ quite considerably, a new Heart of Azeroth system, a continuation of the BfA story, new achievement unlocks like flying, and then Season 3 came around with a new Mythic plus affix, a new mega dungeon, and a whole new raid tier. So we for sure have a lot of stuff to do in WoW right now, but is any of it any good? Let's start with the raid, because that's what a lot of players tend to come back to World of Warcraft for. I think WoW still does endgame raiding better than any other MMO out there, so it's no surprise that every time a new raid opens up, plenty of players come back looking to check things out. Some might stick around to ride out the rest of the expansion, others might unsub after a month and wait until the next raid tier again. I've seen plenty of people in both pools. I think the better a raid tier is, the more likely people are to stick around. So how does the Eternal Palace measure up to some of the best raids out there? Honestly, I've been having a blast. Our guild cleared normal and heroic in the first week, we cleared heroic again in the second week, and because Mythic opened up, we also dove straight into that and managed to take down 3 bosses on Mythic difficulty. Now from an aesthetics point of view, I think the raid is beautiful. They've done an underwater theme incredibly well, and a lot of the fights really reflect where we are and who we're fighting. I think the Najdatar zone itself could have been given some more underwater elements to sell the idea that we're on the bottom of the ocean or what have you, but I'm so glad we can at least see it in the raid. From an encounter design and mechanics perspective, I don't think there's a fight in here that I haven't enjoyed so far. I can see some of them getting a little tedious after 3 months for sure, but for right now I'm really enjoying running through the raid on multiple difficulties, and I'm always excited for Tuesday to roll around again so we can go clear heroic and then, give a few more mythic bosses a bash. I would say that I felt like normal and heroic were fairly easy when compared to some other raids. We didn't really hit any sort of wall on heroic until Queen Azara herself. During the Battle of Desert Lord raid, things were a little easy up until Rastakhan. He was a bit more complicated, but went down fairly quickly after we sussed out the fight. Mecca Talk, on the other hand, was definitely more of a wall than any other boss in the Eternal Palace. We didn't really run into those issues with the Eternal Palace at all, but Queen Azara was an incredibly intense fight with some really cool mechanics. We only just eked out our first kill in the raid's opening week on heroic, so that was pretty epic. Going through Mythic is definitely more interesting and a lot more difficult. The first boss is actually one of the harder bosses to get through in Mythic right now, at least for the early bosses, so if you're used to pugging Mythic raids, or your guild just likes to hop in there every now and then, you might find yourself stuck for quite a bit. I think the 2 bosses after that are actually easier to take down, so this is the first time in a little while that the first Mythic boss will be a progression wall right out of the gate. I definitely don't think Mythic pugs will be progressing too well anytime soon. So another great raid tier in my opinion, which is sure to pull some folks back into the game, and hopefully a few of them will stick around to see how everything unfolds. The end of the raid definitely leaves a few questions unanswered, so I'm super stoked to see exactly where we go from here and what happens next. An awesome raid tier isn't really anything new though. The encounter design and raid team has been killing it for pretty much every raid tier for a while now. Even throughout Warlords when there was nothing else to do, the raids were still awesome. The same has gone for BfA, the raids have all been fantastic. It's the rest of the game that needs a little help. So what about the 2 new zones we have in 8.2? Let's start with Nazjatar. I think the top level is a little boring for a good chunk of the zone, but it gets really pretty when you delve under the crust and start exploring some of the caverns. The Coral Forest is cool too, but what I love the most about Nazjatar is the variety of world quests. We all knew this zone was going to be a world quest hub for the majority of the time. That's kind of what it's been designed for. So I'm really happy that it's not just all kill, 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 collect, collect, collect. You know, they made good use of a few old mini games like Bejeweled and the circuit game to change things up, and it's always nice to get a useful reward for playing a mini game every now and then. I do like the zone for the most part, but I think it did get considerably better when I unlocked flying. The verticality of the zone can be a problem when you're on foot, and being able to skirt around all the obstacles and dive in and out of the caves makes everything so much faster and cleaner when you're trying to get your daily activities done. There isn't really a great deal of content past the dailies though, so when people hit Exalted, I think they might gloss over Nazjatar for the most part, besides maybe the mana pearl stuff if they're working towards higher essences, or mounts, or more benthic gear, and then the artifact power if they're actively farming that, because Nazjatar world quests offer the most AP right now, but outside of those activities, I actually don't know if I'll spend much more time in Naz now that I've hit Exalted with a reputation. I guess that still means I'll be here for half the world quests and dailies though, seeing as they reward mana pearls and AP, and I do still need to level up my other bodyguards for the achievements, and I'll hop into any Naz shard with guildies who have the PvP event active. Alright, I guess there still is plenty of reasons to stick around in Nazjatar, but I won't feel as bad for skipping a day now that I've hit that Exalted mark. I do think it's a great zone when everything is said and done, especially after you unlock flying. They also did a great job creating a gearing system in Naz that pretty much everyone can hop into to help gear them up more than you would usually be able to without hopping into dungeons or raids. Being able to get some gear solo for a change is quite nice. It does tend to take quite a bit of extra time to upgrade all of that benthic gear too, but if that's something that you're interested in, then you'll probably have plenty of fun left in Nazjatar. The other new zone is Mecca Gong. Now Mecca Gong is completely different because you have to kind of find your own goals to work towards. There's plenty to do, you just don't get any form of guidance on where to go, what to do, or what the rewards are. There's a crazy number of achievements with rewards ranging from titles, pets and mounts, as well as blueprints to create your own rings, trinkets, mounts, new hearthstones, flying devices, explosive devices, traps, rare spawning items. Honestly, it's a pretty extensive list. For any collectors or completionists out there, Mecca Gong is a dream come true. But if you want structure or story, you probably won't get much out of it. I personally didn't enjoy Mecca Gong as much as I thought I was going to. It's nice that you can go at your own pace and you can grind as much as you want to if that's what you want to do. I'm just not as interested as I was expecting to be. I just hit Exalted with the Rust Bolt Rebellion, so I'll probably chill on the daily activities here as well. I'll definitely pop by to get the world quest done each day though, because 850 rep from a single world quest is still absolutely insane to me, but I won't really feel guilty at all for skipping everything else now that I don't really need the rep anymore. I will still come back for some spare parts for ranks of essences, but that's a different story. I also don't really care too much for how the zone looks. It's all very samey and boring to me. I wish they had included parts of the Mecca Gong city proper in the zone, kind of how like Suramar was done in Legion. We could see the walls of Suramar for the longest time, but we couldn't really get in there until we progressed far enough through the story. Finally sneaking into the city that's been so mysterious for a good chunk of the questline was really cool, but that just never happens in the Mecca Gong zone. We do eventually get to see parts of the city, but only really in the Mega Dungeon. I still enjoyed the zone enough to get everything done and get to Exalted, but I wasn't sat in Junkwort Depot for hours farming parts and all that. I wasn't really spending any extra time in Mecca Gong. I also probably won't be getting the Meta achievement anytime soon, but that's okay. With patch 8.2 having 2 very different zones, hopefully you'll click with at least one of them. I think the largest issue I have with the Mecca Gong zone though is the story, because it kind of didn't exist. You got the intro quest, which which explained who the Rust Bolt Rebellion were, and we found out who King Mecca Gong is and why he's so bad, what he wants to do, and why we're going to work against him. And then you don't really get anything after that. We hop into the dungeon without any other discussion really, and zoom through the city, knocking down anyone in our path and dethroning the king, without another word to, well, anyone. We don't gain access to the city to use as another hub or farming area after we've cleared it out. We don't see any changes with the Rust Bolt Rebellion right now either. It just feels kind of empty. Maybe we'll see those changes in the next patch or a mini patch to reflect how the story progressed, but I kind of doubt it. I think Mecca Gong will be left here in its current state forevermore, and we'll move on to the next zone. As for the Mega Dungeon itself, I think this was done pretty well. I think it could have been a bit better, mainly because we spend half of it outside in the Mecca Gong zone that we've been exploring for a few weeks before the dungeon opened up, and the Mecca Gong city was being super teased to us, but we only fight 4 of the bosses down there. That was a bit disappointing to me. I would have loved to see more of the city itself and have the majority of the dungeon based down there, but the encounter design is amazing for this dungeon. I love the idea of a mega dungeon in general. I thoroughly enjoyed Karazhan when it opened up in Legion, and I absolutely love Mecca Gong in patch 8.2. Having difficult content to work through with a small group is always going to be right up my alley. I love the tight-knit feeling of just a party of 5 delving into this dangerous environment. You don't have anyone else to rely on if things go wrong, so you all have to be on your toes and really think on your feet sometimes. I also love that both mega dungeons that we've seen so far have had little secret hard modes hidden away. Secrets are also a huge thing for me, and having them in the context of a mega dungeon is honestly one of the best things in the game, in my opinion. With great encounters that are actually challenging for what they are, and with the environment of the Mecca Gong city, I think they did a great job with the mega dungeon. I just wish we spent a bit more time in the city itself. The mega dungeon also stays pretty relevant as we keep progressing through patch 8.2. It's one of the major sources of the punch cards for the Mecca Gong trinket, which is also super powerful right now. It's the only source for the Visions of Perfection Essence, and the required items to start ranking that up to rank 3 and rank 4 if that's something you want to go after. Rank 4 comes from doing the Mecca Gong hard mode without anyone dying at all through the entire run, so that's definitely something to aim for, and you get some decent bragging rights if you manage to get it done. So this mega dungeon won't just fade into obscurity after you run it once, which is always nice for this kind of content. That's another win for patch 8.2 in my book. But we might be glossing over the most important update in 8.2, the Heart of Azeroth system. We now have essences that we can collect, rank up and equip to give us access to super powerful new abilities. This system so far is at least 10 times better than the Azerite trait armor stuff we had before, no questions asked. If this expansion started with essences like this, we might be in a very different place right now, and patch 8.2 might just be adding new essences to hunt for and rank up and all that jazz, instead of completely revamping the main progression feature in the expansion. I'm sure that took away a lot of development from some other things. Azerite armor didn't really work at the end of the day, and as we entered the Battle of Desert Allure, we kind of saw the real flaws, because we started off with no traits again, and we had to grind artifact power to re-earn the same tiers, and in some cases the exact same traits that we already had. Thankfully, all of that has been thrown out the window as a progression path. We gain access to the all by default, and we can focus on these essences instead. Now, when it comes down to changing how a class feels or plays, essences don't really do much. In that regard, I would say they have failed. But I'm also not too sure if that was really the plan at all. They don't interact with rotational abilities, they don't change how your spells work at all. They just give you another cooldown to use. That's pretty much all they do. So expecting them to suddenly fix everything wrong with a class or spec is probably asking too much of this system, even if that's what BfA really needs right now. The dev team has said several times that huge class changes are being saved for patch 9.0, so we won't see any of that stuff in BfA whatsoever. The essences certainly don't change much, but they do offer you very powerful cooldowns for pretty much any scenario you can think of. There's large AoE lasers, huge burst abilities, longer duration power increases, and even a few passive effects thrown in for good measure. The essences are definitely powerful, and they feel good to use most of the time. Firing off a mega laser in Mythic Plus dungeons is not going to get old anytime soon, at least for me. That's not the best part of the essence system in my opinion though. You have to actually work for this stuff. If you want a rank 3 essence, you have to focus on that essence and work through quite a few requirements in some cases before you can equip that epic rank. Everybody with that essence went through the same thing, so you know exactly what someone's done by the essences that they have. Rank 4s are even more special and more prestigious. They only come from achieving something in game, whether that's running hard mode Mecca Gong with no deaths or killing Queen Azara on Mythic difficulty. Most of the rank 4s come from hard to complete content. Your reward for getting through it is a shiny new visual effect for the appropriate essence. So not only do we have progression in the form of throughput from ranks 1 to 3, but the super rank 4 gives you a flashy new effect that everyone else is going to see. That is the perfect way to build a progression system in my eyes. Make us work for the upgrades that provide an actual bonus up to a cap, preferably a cap that everyone can achieve eventually, and then throw in a golden bone at the end for anyone willing to put in the extra effort. I can't wait to start unlocking some rank 4s, but first I'm going to finish collecting every essence that I can at rank 3. I think collecting and ranking up my essences has been the most fun I've had in WoW for a while, and it's even got me to start playing around with tanking again. I think if anything has saved BfA in this patch at this point, it's definitely the new Titan Essence system. And the last thing I really wanted to touch on was the new Mythic Plus affix. I actually don't really have any new opinions on this. I still don't really like it. It hasn't changed enough from the PTR to come anywhere near close to something that I have fun with. It's another affix that just stalls the timer and makes your run take even longer. Some people think Reaping was just a mindless AoE fest, but I think it was way more fun to have control over when the affix would pop, so you could position yourself in the best possible way to make it easier, and more efficient. Yes, it was fast. Yes, it was AoE. AoE in big numbers is always fun. But the emissaries in Mythic Plus right now are either a non-issue that you just have to nuke down and not really worry about, or so problematic that you try to avoid them as much as possible. If the answer is, well, this doesn't change too much, blow it up, and that's too hard to deal with, let's completely avoid it, does it really do anything besides slow you down? You can pull off some cool tricks to deal with the emissaries faster, sure, but I still think any affix that is designed to slow you down significantly is just going to be less interesting in my personal opinion. Thankfully, I have an awesome guild full of talented players who can carry me to victory. They make running Mythic Plus dungeons fun, even if the affix itself isn't all too appealing for me, and as I said, I do enjoy the smaller group play, so I'll grin and bear it for now, but I think Reaping was way better. So, has Battle for Azeroth been saved? I would say at least a little bit. We're still getting pulled out of the mud and back onto the tracks at this point. It's a fantastic start, but this train could get derailed again faster than you can say Bob's your uncle, Fanny's your aunt, so it all depends on what comes next. Patch 8.2 has laid some amazing foundations for the rest of the expansion. The raid is great, the mega dungeon is great, the zones are decent and varied, the new Heart of Azeroth system is amazing for anyone who yearns for a real sense of progression, and I think we're set up pretty well to go somewhere really cool. N'Zoth has been freed. Queen Azara was spirited away. We're stuck down in Nazjatar with no idea what to do next. The shadows are rising, and I hope the next few patches do the rest of this expansion justice. This could still end up being one of the best expansions this game has ever seen. Patch 8.2 has put us on the right track. We just need to get to the next station without any huge boulders in the way. I'm super excited to see what lies in store for patch 8.25 and patch 8.3, and I think this year's BlizzCon will be one of the largest and best and most exciting BlizzCons we've seen in a while. The future looks promising from where I'm sitting. But that's it for this video. What do you think of patch 8.2 now that you've been able to play around with it for a few weeks? Have you managed to get to Exalted with the new factions, or complete the raid on normal or heroic, or maybe just done the mega dungeon yet? What's your favourite part of 8.2 so far? Leave all your thoughts in the comments section below. A big thank you to all of our supporters over on Patreon. You can see their names floating by on screen. If you want to join these lovely guys and gals, you can find a link in the description below. Remember to leave a like just below the video before you leave, and if you want to see more, make sure to subscribe. But apart from that, thanks for watching folks, good luck and have fun, and as always I will see you next time.